Dreamscape presents A Changing World, Patriotism Against a Globalist Agenda by César Vidal, narrated by John Pruden. Introduction. On December 26, 1991, an event of extraordinary importance in universal history took place. It involved the dissolution of the Soviet Union, an event of enormous repercussions that almost no one had anticipated. In fact, only the historian Andrei Amalrík and Nobel laureate and writer Alexander Solzhenitsyn, two Russian dissidents, had enough courage and vision to forecast that such a seismic event would take place. To be honest, the reality is that the vast majority of analysts did not expect such an outcome. Professor Javier Tuzel, in one of the most ludicrous records of Spanish academic history ever recorded, wrote just a few days before the collapse of the USSR that it would continue to be a reality during the next millennium and that even communist Germany would surpass the West in a few years. It was an outlandish absurdity, but it certainly was not an isolated incident. In fact, none of the intelligence agencies of the Western powers foresaw the collapse of the USSR, which does not say much about their effectiveness. It was true that the repressive character of the Soviet model was already impossible to conceal. For example, the time had already passed when the existence of the network of concentration camps could be blatantly denied. It was an obvious reality since 1917. But it had exploded in the West's face with the publication of Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn in the early 70s of the 20th century. No less obvious was the oligarchic character of its social structures, which not only did not especially favor workers and peasants, to quote a famous Soviet slogan, but in fact favored those whom the Russian Voslensky called the nomenklatura, that is, an entire caste of privileged. However, despite the network of concentration camps, the absence of freedoms, the injustice of a ruling class of party officials, and the comparative backwardness in economic terms, no one expected the demise of the Soviet dictatorship, and in a special way included the socialists as well as the communists from the left wing worldwide. The unexpected triumph of the Cold War, the United States and its allies really had not defeated the USSR. However, the USSR had undeniably lost, triggered a wave of extraordinary optimism. What had been longed for but not predicted.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?